I found during my research for this video a lot of conflicting information between various different news agencies. So I've based the video's facts and figures on the report Investigation of a Building Collapse in Delhi by Chandan Ghosh. He undertook a forensic evaluation of the building post-collapse. As always, I will put the link to the report in the pinned comment under the sources section. Our story goes back to 1988 and the construction of a one-storey building on a narrow slip of land near Lalita Park, Laxmi Nagar, East Delhi. The footprint for the structure was fairly small, at just 4.6 metres wide, with a depth of 18.3 metres. The smallish footprint was adequate enough for a one-storey property. The building did, however, have a 3-metre deep basement. The whole area fell under a floodplain, but water ingress protection was not considered at the time, leaving the building's foundations vulnerable. But again, only being a one-storey building, undermined footings were kind of less of a concern. It was still an inadequate structure, however. The building's owners wanted to extend, and with the current structure taking up the whole plot of land, the only direction they decided was up. Of course, the local authority were not informed and none of the construction codes were followed, which were set out by the city. I mean, this is a plainly difficult video subject after all. Anywho's, over the early 1990s, the building was built up to 3 stories tall. It had a brick outer wall supported by 12 concrete reinforced columns. As the structure rose above the first floor, it projected beyond its footprint in a cantilever section, nearly 50% of its width to the west. Built on top of the first projection were brick floating walls. By 2005, the building was up to its 5th story, making it 4 times taller than its original structure, which was now at a height of 20.5 metres, which interestingly was also 4 times the width of the plot of land, not including the 50% overhang. Needless to say, the building would be considered by pretty much anyone looking at it as not very well balanced. Reportedly, there were 40 rooms within the building, which housed over 200 people, as stated by Chandan Ghosh, professor and head of the National Institute of Disaster Management. To such building, existing building bylaws, development control rules, land use policy and master plan etc. cannot be complied with. To divide up the rooms, thin brick walls were employed, and wiring for electrical and plumbing for sewage and fresh water was not very well planned out, breaking randomly through floorboards, walls and even supporting joists. The side effect of this was basically turning the building into one big giant piece of Swiss cheese, with the same sort of structural integrity that goes along with it. And on top of all this, to add the heavy cherry to the dodgy cake, there was a 15,000 litre water tank balanced on top of the whole building. The large numbers of rooms with very few amenities and thus lower rent attracted migrant workers from different parts of the country. Rent was reported by the BBC as 300 rupees, roughly £4.20 in 2010 a month. In comparison to the 100 rupees per 12 to 13 hours working day some labourers can earn for, that said, very dangerous back-breaking work. The basement, at some point prior to 2010, had been converted into a sweatshop with multiple sewing machines chattering away during the working hours. Crammed in with no attention given to fire, building and earthquake codes, the building offered little in the way of quick escape in the event of a disaster. Which sadly leads us on to, it is the evening of Monday the 15th of November 2010, and mostly everything seems normal around the narrow streets of Laxmi Nagar. Residents in the 5-storey building near Lalita Park are settling in for the night. At around 8:15 PM and without any real warning, the building collapsed and toppled over towards the west side. As noted by the BBC, witnesses described the block crumbling like a pack of cards or as if it had been made of sand. It is not known how many people were actually inside the building at the time of the collapse. Parts of the concrete structure facade and bricks toppled into the empty space next to the building's foundations. As soon as the collapse occurred, passers-by began helping the injured and started clearing away debris. As more and more people assisted, pieces of the building were moved off-site by using a human chain. Rescue workers were hampered in reaching the site by the narrow streets around the building, meaning that the first paramedics and firefighters didn't reach the stricken building until at least 45 minutes after its collapse. Heavy equipment would eventually reach the building. This included bulldozers and jackhammers, but a large proportion of the recovery works was performed all by hand with just mere hammers and chisels, removing material one piece at a time. As the hours passed by, more and more bodies were pulled from the pile, raising the death toll. By the 16th, the next day, news agencies reported at least 61 dead and scores more injured. Immediately after the collapse, Amritpal Singh, the building's owner, fled. He would be apprehended the next day and charged with culpable homicide. During the rescue efforts, injured survivors were whisked away by rickshaw to hospitals. In total, it was estimated around 150 people would attend hospital with varying injuries, up to and including loss of limbs. It would take roughly 5 days before all the debris had been sorted through. After the first day, the Delhi government promised a payment of 200,000 rupees to bereaved families. By the end of the rescue efforts, the final death toll was estimated at 67, although it has also been reported as up to 70. The number isn't really 100% due to the transient nature of the migrant workers that live within, and the lack of proper registration of residents. Multiple buildings in the area were evacuated due to water ingress and improper construction, which is good, being kind of proactive, but much of the displaced people were just dumped out into the streets, with many having to live in tents. Understandably, the cause was a concern to all involved. A research commission was set up, chaired by Justice Lakeshwar Prasad. Multiple reports were submitted to the commission, one of which was a forensic examination into the building's remains. The columns and footings for the building were excavated in a form of building autopsy. The investigation, headed by Chandan Ghosh, found that the vital 12 support reinforced columns were substandard in size. They were also found to be placed at not the best points in the building for structural integrity, instead just following the external walls. It was found that column number 10 was the likely source of failure. It was calculated that the load it needed to carry was some 108 tonnes, and this would require the column to be at least 3 metres wide by 3 metres deep. Instead, it was actually found to be about 1/30th of the required square metres size. It was only calculated to have a capable load-bearing capacity of roughly 5 tonnes. In addition to this, it was found that some of the concrete columns and beams had been over-reinforced with steel rebar. This means that when it fails, it gives no prior warning. In comparison, under-reinforced concrete fails at a much slower rate, giving people more of an opportunity to see that the concrete is failing. And even worse, talking about the rebar, above the 3rd floor, the concrete beams had no reinforcement at all, as seen during the forensic examination of the wreckage. But although severely overloaded, it had survived some 15 years post-extension beyond the ground floor. Something below the columns was also a concern. You see, the building was built on a floodplain, and the ground was a sandy, silty type material, and it is very susceptible to waterlogging. Inspections of the basement found no hardcore material or concrete underneath the loose brick floors, and even loose silty sand mud was discovered, as well as other evidence of water ingress. After interviewing survivors and workers from the sweatshop, it was found that the basement was quite frequently flooded, requiring pumping out on occasion, although there's no evidence to show that pumping out had occurred close to the collapse. The collapse failure was thus a waterlogged ground that had undermined column 10, which after having exceeded its load strength failed suddenly, collapsing the entire building around it. Basically, there was nothing else supporting it. But like a lot of these types of incidents, the building failing is the tip of the disaster iceberg. It's more of a legislative issue, or more to the point, enforcing of rules of building construction. The commission set up to investigate the collapse pointed the finger of blame at the MCD, or the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, and the Delhi Development Authority, for not detecting that the building was illegal, saying, "Even if one department had done its duty by being vigilant and bringing the real facts to the fore, the unfortunate building would not have been constructed in such a haphazard manner. Basically, the building was poorly built and was allowed to by the negligence of the local authorities." So it's scale time. It's going to be a 5, and this is what I've got for my root cause analysis card. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below.